Now, according to Stats South Africa, 45% of South African children are living with their mothers. Less than 31% of these children lived with both parents. What are the implications of these family dynamics for child protection as well as well-being in South Africa? Joining us is Gloria Khoza, Child Protection Officer at Unicef South Africa. Gloria, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it then. It's an interesting dynamic, but one that is certainly rife, and it doesn't look like it's abating anytime soon, according to statistics.
Yes, good afternoon, Arabile, and your viewers. First, maybe let me start by thanking you for the opportunity this afternoon to engage with you. Just also, we commend as the United Nations Children's Fund the work of the government, especially with releasing the latest General Household Survey, which is very useful and insightful in understanding the real lives of children. And this guides our collective response. And as you're saying, and unfortunately, the trends aren't getting any better, which requires more concerted efforts in changing the lives of children in the country.
Yeah, maybe from a UNICEF point of view, you could perhaps share what the family dynamics pretty much look like here, having, growing up in a nuclear family, both parents being around and with you all the time, versus growing up with just your mother or even just your father in some instances, which certainly are around.
Yes. So I think as you've indicated earlier, and the results from the survey indicate that about 31% of children live with both biological parents. So this is your typical mom and dad arrangements, with 45% living with their mothers only and over 60% living with not living with their biological fathers. I think what this shows us, this data shows us, is that children are growing up in a variety of family structures and household living arrangements. So there is no one size fits all in terms of living arrangements for children. What is critical is that adults who live with children, be it a grandmother, the uncle, the aunt, the older sibling, the biological parents, or any other form of caregiver, that they are equipped and supported with the skills and the knowledge that would enable them to care and protect their children.
Yeah, there's also the aspect of being orphaned as well, and how that could impact things like early childhood development, etc. How do all these aspects play into that?
Yes, so I think what's also important is also to highlight some of the variations that exist in terms of orphanhood across the country, especially when we look at some of your provinces like the Free State that has an orphanhood rate of 15% and the Northwest at 14.9%. And orphanhood usually puts children at a higher risk of poverty, being exploited, at a higher risk of dropping out of school and experiencing a range of mental health issues and challenges. What we also see is that they also often lack because they lack a consistent adult care and emotional security, they are more vulnerable to harm. Yeah, so I think in terms of a child's outcomes, it's worsened, but there is things that can be done and that government is doing in order to ensure that children are safeguarded and protected. And this is seen through government-led initiatives and programs such as the Resiha program, that is implemented through drop-in centers across the country, which are an essential lifeline for some of these orphaned and vulnerable children. And I think through trained social service professionals, community workers, children are able to go to a safe space where they can receive a range of services, be it psychosocial support, getting a meal, and as well as, if need be, being referred to critical protection services.
Yeah. What trends are you perhaps seeing that in terms of how the family dynamic may be perhaps not caused or the direct correlation, but a reason for seeing violence against children or abuse, neglect? Are there any trends that you're seeing directly correlated with how the family structure looks?
Yeah, so I think if we look at our standard family structures, and I think noting as well the fluid and dynamic situations in which children live in, when there is one parent that is not actively present, especially that we're seeing 60% of fathers are not necessarily present in their children's life. It does increase children's vulnerability to issues of poverty, emotional strain, and neglect. And this also then, because women then are, and single mothers specifically, usually shoulder the burden of care. And what we're seeing obviously is then that, violence within the home would likely increase. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that is what the situation is around families across the country. But yeah, some of the strains in terms of the living arrangements have an impact in terms of the kind of care environment a child would live in.
Yeah, I mean, does that mean that we need to be re-looking at policies, re-looking at community development and engagement as well with regards to this law enforcement if needs to be the case?
Yes, so it's a range of things that we need to look at. I think, as we know, South African policy landscape is quite strong. What we do need to see is, strengthened coordination between health, education, and social protection services or systems to ensure integrated and holistic services. We also need to see an increased prioritization on prevention of violence within the homes, and this can be, and protection, and this could be seen through the implementation of positive parenting programs, which already government is, leading in terms of implementing across the country, and these can be really scaled to ensure that, every family or household is able to receive key skills and tips on how to nurture and protect their child. And, also what's also required and what's also very critical is looking at shifting social norms and ensuring more deliberate engagement with men and boys, our traditional leaders, and entire communities, to break some of the cycles of silence that are happening within our homes and communities, and reduce violence across the country.
Yeah, and that very last point is, I think, absolutely critical, considering the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide we're currently seeing as well in the country, which has been happening for a number of years now. It's absolutely abhorrent. And are there other ways that UNICEF is thinking of how we could be better engaging, whether it be with men, to really remove the scourge completely from the country? Or is it just a case of better law enforcement, greater communication? What is the thinking?
It's a combination of all of those. It is around, stronger implementation, and also it's around creating greater awareness. For example, it's changing the notion in that fathers are not responsible for care, and really promoting their active, present involvement within the home. This is not just around, taking care of baby or the children, but also participating in normal everyday household chores, so that we are starting to, balance, the burden of care, so to say, between women and men, so that, everybody really works. We work towards more gender equitable care that would then result in reductions in violence, but also improve relationships between men and women, and therefore then reduce intimate partner violence and the scourge of GBV as we're seeing.
Gloria, appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much for your work as well as Child Protection Officer at UNICEF South Africa, Gloria Khoza.